Talk Radio Europe.
Online at tre.radio.
This is Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
The TRE Book Show is sponsored by Audible. Click on the Audible banner on the talkradioeurope.com homepage to download your free audiobook today. Terms and conditions apply.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now from the UK is MaryBrown. As she enters her 9th decade, she's published her debut novel. It's called I Used to Be, and it explores people at the margins of society, children already labelled no-hopers before they reach adolescence, alongside the searing journey of grief and loneliness that has chased Maude into old age. Welcome to the book show, Mary.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to chat with you, and there's a really interesting backstory to your book. The fact that you listened to a talk at Cheltenham Literary Festival by William Golding, and that really set this whole book in motion.
That's right, yes. I heard this talk about William Golding, and apparently he said he wanted to write a book about how children would really behave on a desert island, not the sort of rosy pictures he'd been reading to his children. So he wrote Lord of the Flies, which is a book I hate. I just don't believe that children would behave like that on a desert island. And I said then, I'll write a book about how girls would behave on a desert island. So that was the sort of starting point. But the island changed, and someone else walked onto this island, and it became more about the relationship between these girls on their island and an old woman who I think has got a lot of me in her. I think that's why she walked onto their island.
Yes. So tell us a bit about this island. Where is it?
This island is a piece of waste ground by a railway station. If you go to a railway station where two railway lines meet, there is always a sort of triangular piece of wasteland where one line goes one way and another goes the other way. And I happened to see one of these when I was on a train, and it was looking really beautiful, covered in buddleia and ragwort. And the moment I saw it, I thought, right, there's my island. And it was in an inner city, so I made the girls come from deprived homes in the inner city.
And your central character is called Kaylee. Tell us about her.
Well, she's the leader of the gang, Kaylee, who says she's an accidental child because her mother never meant to have her, and then she gets pregnant as well. But she is a rebel, and a group of children on the margins of society from difficult backgrounds with parents who've abandoned them or parents in prison. And then she gathers this group around her, and they call themselves Kaylee's crew, and they meet on this waste ground. But she's not really the central... Well, she was the central character until Maude appeared, and Maude just walked in without me asking her to. And the novel sort of changed direction and became the relationship between Maude and Kaylee, because when Kaylee finds she's pregnant, Maude offers her a home, and two more unsuitable people to share a home it would be difficult to find, but they manage.
So tell us a bit more about Maude.
Well, Maude was a very ordinary woman. She was a librarian, and she got married, and she had 2 children. She had ambitions to be a teacher, which she gave up. And then when her children were teenagers, still living at home, her son got killed in a motorbike accident, and she was completely devastated with grief, so devastated that her husband eventually left her, and her other son walked out, and she doesn't know how to find either of them.
Oh, gosh.
And she becomes more and more of a recluse and takes no care of herself. The children, when they meet her, say she stinks, which she does. And all she has in her life is her cats, and they gradually die off one by one. And when the final one dies, she goes everywhere calling for it, though she knows quite well it's dead. And that's how she finds herself on the waste ground, because she thinks it's somewhere a sick cat might go to die.
That's very sad. You said there's a lot of you in Maude. I hope all of that isn't true for you.
No, it isn't true for me. But my brother died when he was in his 20s, and the grief is what I witnessed in my mother.
Oh, I can only imagine. So, was it a bit cathartic in a way, writing the character of Maude?
I suppose it was. I hadn't thought about it like that before, but probably.
Yes. And how did you feel writing that relationship between Maude and Kaylee? Were you able to draw on experiences with that?
Yes and no. For 10 years I was a voluntary part-time prison chaplain, and I'm in a local prison, so I met lots and lots of young men who could have been the brothers and fathers and uncles of Kaylee's crew, and I felt I knew something about their lives. And
how did you feel meeting people like that?
This is what a lot of the book comes from. I was immensely impressed with the way they sympathised and supported each other. I used to run a silent meeting every Monday afternoon, and I was surprised how popular it was. The men used to come for a bit of quiet, because it's not quiet anywhere in prison. And after half an hour of silence, I used to say, would anyone like to share anything? And they shared the most terrible problems, and they were so supportive of each other. And that's where I think Kaylee's crew came from.
Oh, how fantastic. It's nice to hear stories like that, because we don't get that many positive stories about people in prison, do we?
No, we don't. And that is because they do come from the margins of society, and they do offend. But the vast majority of the men I met in prisons came from very deprived backgrounds. 1 in 3 of the people in prison have spent some of their time in care. And while it doesn't forgive what they've done, it does explain some of it.
Definitely. So just going back to William Golding's Lord of the Flies then, you said that he started by sharing a story with his children that was a very different type of story.
Yes, it was. Oh, I forget. He said there were this talk said there were a lot of children's books set on desert islands where I can't remember the names of them now. Oh, so the Swiss Family Robinson, was that?
Oh, yes.
One? And he said it just wouldn't be like that. And I just disagreed totally with William Golding's view of human nature.
Yeah, so he thought his book was more realistic, did he?
He did, yes. And apparently, according to this talk, it took him, was it 2 weeks to write it, or maybe it was 2 months? Very, very quick, anyhow.
Gosh, but you've been working on your story for a lot longer.
I have, yes. I've rewritten it 3 times.
And I understand the publishers, Fantastic Books, have published your book, and Dan, the CEO, said that he knew that they had something special, which is nice.
Yes, it was a great compliment.
So from when you finished the book, there was a lot of editing that needed to be done, was there?
Well, yes. I mean, I wrote it because I was trying to write about a relationship. The first time I wrote it in the third person, though I kept thinking this ought to be in the first person. So I rewrote it after a few publishers had rejected it in the first person, Maude, and that didn't work either. So then I rewrote it again in 2 different voices with different kinds of print, some from Kaylee and some from Maude. That's what I sent to Fantastic Books, and they said that the bits where I tried to write in Kaylee's voice just didn't work. And I'd had a lot of conversation in that of the kids on the tip, and they recommended cutting most of that and just talking about Kaylee through Maude's eyes. So I rewrote it again, and they liked it remarkably. I was amazed.
Oh, fantastic. So has it inspired you to write more, do you think?
Not really. In fact, when Fantastic Books lost it for a while, and when they got back to me, I was in the middle of writing another book, which is about to be published, and I said, well, when I finish this, I might rewrite it, and I was in two minds as to whether I could really go back to it, but I did. So, but since I'm not quite sure what. I've written 2 books since, anyhow.
Oh, that's amazing. So are the others out?
Well, one was out a few years ago. It was called Confessions of a Prison Chaplain, and that was published by Waterside Books, who only publish books about the criminal justice system. And the other is called, the other's about death, called The Undiscovered Country, Conversations about Death and Dying, and that's sort of in the editing stage. A publisher has accepted it, and it's hopefully coming out in time for Death Awareness Week in May.
Okay, so they're both non-fiction, are they?
They're both non-fiction. I Used to Be is my first and probably only novel. I know something else, well, a couple of writing things I want to get involved in, but not novels. I mean, this novel just appeared to me, and I felt I had to write it. I haven't had that sensation again. I think to embark on a novel in your 80s is a bit ambitious.
Well, you're doing amazing so far. I think it's brilliant. If people want to get a copy of I Used to Be, it's out now and it's available to buy on our website in the TRE bookshop section. It's by MaryBrown, who we've been chatting to. Mary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, more than ever, we are your voice in Spain.
TRE Talk Radio Europe.